What would you do if a single traffic stop changed the rest of your life? Not because you did something wrong, but because you said something you didn't have to say. Right now, stop for a second. Actually, imagine it. You're driving home. Maybe it's late. Maybe it's a Tuesday afternoon. You check your mirror and there they are, flashing lights. Your heart does that thing. That little jump. The pulse in your neck starts talking to you. Most people think they know what happens next. Roll down the window, be polite, answer the questions, keep your hands on the wheel, and then go home. But here's the question most people never ask themselves before those lights appear. What are you actually required to do? And what are you voluntarily giving away the second you open your mouth? Don't answer that yet. Just hold it. Because by the end of this video, you're going to see traffic stops differently than 99% of drivers on the road. And what I'm about to tell you might feel uncomfortable at first. That's normal. That's the point. Most people think a traffic stop is simple. Cop pulls you over, you talk, you get a warning or a ticket, you leave. That's what we see in movies. That's what we've internalized from a lifetime of watching other people's interactions. But here's the pattern break. A traffic stop is not a conversation. It is a legal encounter with two very different sets of rules, and only one person in that interaction has been trained to use those rules to their advantage. Hint, it's not you. Let me say that again. A traffic stop is not a conversation. It is a structured legal procedure. And the moment you treat it like a casual chat, you start giving away protections you didn't even know you had. Now, before we go any further, let me build some credibility here. What I'm sharing isn't conspiracy theory. It's not anti-law enforcement. This is based on decades of case law, Supreme Court rulings, training manuals from police academies, and interviews with defense attorneys who watch body cam footage for a living. I've spent hundreds of hours studying traffic stop psychology, legal boundaries, and the specific moments where citizens unknowingly hand over their rights. This is real, and it matters. Here's your promise for the next 20 to 30 minutes. You are going to learn the 5 things law enforcement is legally allowed to do that they almost never explain to you. You are going to learn the 3 phrases that feel helpful in the moment but can actually hurt you later. You are going to learn the difference between what you must do and what you are simply being asked to do. And by the time we're done, you will have a clear, repeatable mental framework for any traffic stop you ever experience again. But let's start with the biggest lie most drivers believe. The lie that gets people into real trouble without them ever seeing it coming. Most people believe that if you have nothing to hide, you should just answer every question honestly. That sounds reasonable, right? It feels cooperative, it feels respectful. And here's the psychological trick. It also feels like safety, because cooperation feels safe, but cooperation and legal protection are not the same thing. In fact, sometimes they are opposites. Stay with me because this next part matters. You are never required to answer questions that go beyond your identity during a traffic stop. Let me be crystal clear. In almost every state in America, you are legally required to provide your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. That's the full list of mandatory verbal responses. Where are you going? Not required. Where are you coming from? Not required. Have you been drinking? Not required. Do you know why I stopped you? Not required. Do you mind if I ask you a few more questions? That's a trap disguised as politeness. Here's the wrong way. The wrong way is to treat every question like a test you have to pass by answering. The wrong way is to assume silence looks guilty. The wrong way is to fill the silence with nervous chatter because your anxiety wants to prove you're a good person. I've seen body cam footage where someone was driving perfectly legally, got pulled for a minor equipment violation, and within 90 seconds, they had volunteered that they were coming from a friend's house, that they'd had 1 beer 3 hours ago, and that they were a little stressed because they lost their job last month. None of that was asked for. None of that was required. And all of it became notes in a report. The smart move? The smart move is polite, calm, and minimal. Good evening, officer. Here is my license and registration. I want to be fully cooperative. I also choose to remain silent about any other questions. Say that last part with me. I choose to remain silent. Those 6 words are among the most powerful you can ever speak during a traffic stop. And almost nobody uses them because almost nobody knows they can. Now let me pause here and ask you a reflective question. Think back to the last time you were pulled over. Did you say anything you didn't have to say? Did you explain, justify, or apologize for something that wasn't even the reason for the stop? Most people say yes, and that's not a judgment. That's just human nature under pressure. But human nature under pressure is exactly what the structure of a traffic stop is designed to exploit. Not maliciously, not evilly, just effectively. Because police officers are trained to ask open-ended questions that encourage you to talk. And talking is how evidence gets built. Here's a psychological insight that will change how you see every traffic stop from now on. When an officer asks you a question, they already know the answer to most of them. They already saw your speed. They already ran your license plate before they turned on the lights. They already know if your registration is valid. The question isn't for information. The question is for admission. They want to hear you say the thing they already know. Why? Because your spoken words are evidence in a way that their radar reading sometimes isn't. Your voice admitting you were going a little fast is gold in court. Your voice saying, "I probably rolled through that stop sign," is gold. Your voice apologizing for something you didn't even do is gold. Not because you're guilty, but because you just became your own witness against yourself. This is the part nobody talks about. The Fifth Amendment isn't just for criminals in courtrooms. The right to remain silent attaches the moment you are in a custodial interrogation. And here's where it gets interesting. A traffic stop is legally considered a Terry stop, named after the Supreme Court case Terry v. Ohio. That means you are detained but not fully arrested. And during that detention, you have the right to refuse to answer questions that might incriminate you. But most people don't invoke that right because they don't know they have it. Or worse, they think invoking it makes them look suspicious. So they talk and talk and talk. Let me show you the contrast pattern. Bad way. Officer says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You say, I think I might have been going a little fast back there. I wasn't paying attention to my speed, honestly." Congratulations. You just admitted to speeding without the officer having to prove anything. Good way. Officer says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You say, "I'm not sure, officer. I'd prefer not to answer any questions until I understand what this stop is about. Here's my license and registration." Smart move. Officer says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You say, "I'm going to remain silent, officer. I'm happy to provide my documents, but I don't answer questions." See the difference? The first response gives away leverage. The second response politely holds your ground. The third response is legally bulletproof. And here's what police won't tell you. They expect the first response. They are trained to handle the first response. The second response surprises them. The third response resets the entire dynamic of the stop, because now the officer knows they're dealing with someone who understands their rights. And that changes everything. Now, let's talk about the search question. Because this is where most people unknowingly destroy their own legal protections in 3 seconds or less. Officer says, "Do you mind if I take a quick look inside your car?" Your brain says, "I have nothing to hide. If I say no, he'll think I'm hiding something. Just let him look. It'll be faster." Stop. Right there. That thought is the most expensive thought you will ever have during a traffic stop. Here's what's actually happening. The officer is asking for consent to search. Consent is a legal exception to the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches. Without consent, the officer needs probable cause or a warrant. With consent, they need nothing. And here's the part that will blow your mind. Most officers will ask for consent even when they have no legal grounds to search. Why? Because it works. People say yes. In fact, studies on traffic stop data show that consent searches are granted in the majority of stops where they're requested, and the vast majority of those searches find nothing illegal. But that doesn't matter, because the ones that do find something, those convictions rest entirely on your 3-word answer, "Yeah, go ahead." This is not hypothetical. There are thousands of cases where someone with no criminal intent, no illegal behavior, and no suspicious activity ended up charged with a crime because they consented to a search that turned up something a passenger left behind, or a residue they didn't know existed, or an item that looked illegal but wasn't. And because they consented, the evidence was admissible. The court's response? You said yes. So here is your new rule. A rule you need to remember for the rest of your life. Never consent to a search. Ever. Even if you have nothing to hide. Especially if you have nothing to hide. Because your right to privacy is not about hiding bad things. It's about maintaining the boundary between what the government can and cannot do to you without cause. And the moment you say yes, you erase that boundary. But wait, how do you say no without sounding guilty? That's the fear, isn't it? That's the psychological trap. You're afraid that a simple no will escalate the situation. So let me give you the exact script. Officer says, "Do you mind if I look in your car?" You say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches. I want to be cooperative, but I do not give you permission to search my vehicle." That's it. Polite, clear, legally effective. And here's what police don't tell you. If they had probable cause to search, they wouldn't have asked for consent in the first place. They would have just searched. The question itself tells you that they don't have the legal authority without your permission. And here's where we need to talk about K-9 units, because this is a pattern that shocks most people. An officer pulls you over, they take your documents, they come back and say, "I'm going to have a drug dog walk around your car." You don't mind, do you? First, that's not a question. That's a statement dressed up as a question. Second, in most states, unless the dog is already on scene, the officer cannot extend the stop beyond the time reasonably needed to handle the traffic violation just to wait for a dog. The Supreme Court case Rodriguez v. United States made this clear. The stop can't be lengthened for a dog sniff without reasonable suspicion of drugs. But again, most people don't know that. So they sit there, they wait, they assume they have no choice, and that's wrong. Here's your power move. If an officer says they're waiting for a dog, you calmly say, "Am I free to leave? If this stop is over, I'd like to go." Because once the officer finishes writing the warning or the ticket, the legal basis for detaining you ends. Every minute after that is voluntary on your part unless they have new, specific suspicion. This is the edge of the law that most drivers never see. Now let's get real for a minute. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, this sounds confrontational. I don't want to make an officer angry. That feels dangerous. And you're right to think about safety. Your physical safety is always the first priority. Nothing in this script is telling you to be rude, to argue, or to escalate. What I'm giving you is a toolkit for calm, respectful, legally intelligent interaction. You can be silent without being angry. You can decline a search without being aggressive. You can ask if you're free to leave without being hostile. The tone is everything. Your voice should be low, steady, and respectful. Your hands stay visible. Your movements are slow. You are in control of yourself, even if you're not in control of the situation. This leads us to the second thing police don't tell you. They don't tell you that you have the right to record them. In almost every state, as long as you don't interfere with their duties, you can record your traffic stop on your phone, and here's the psychological reason this matters. People act differently when they know they're being recorded. Both sides do. An officer who knows the stop is on video is statistically less likely to escalate, less likely to ask improper questions, and more likely to follow procedure. But most people don't record because they're afraid it will make things worse, or they don't want to be that person. Let me reframe that for you. Recording is not aggression. Recording is documentation, it's evidence, it's memory. Because your memory of what happened during a stressful stop is terrible. That's not an insult, that's neuroscience. Stress degrades memory formation. You will forget details within hours. The camera won't. The right way to record? Before the officer reaches your window, set your phone in a holder or against your dashboard. Hit record, state aloud, "I am recording this traffic stop for everyone's protection." Then leave the phone alone. Don't wave it in anyone's face. Don't narrate, just let it run. If the stop goes sideways, that video is your best friend. If the stop goes perfectly, you delete the video and never think about it again. But you can't go back and record after something goes wrong. Now here's a pattern interrupt that might surprise you. Some of you watching have had good experiences with police. Some of you have had neutral experiences. And some of you have had experiences that left you feeling powerless or afraid. None of that changes the law. The law is the same for everyone, regardless of how you feel about law enforcement. And the law gives you specific protections that most people never use. Not because they don't want to, but because no one ever taught them. That's what this video is for. Let me give you a step-by-step breakdown of the ideal traffic stop, because a plan kills anxiety, and anxiety is what makes people talk too much. Step 1. Lights appear, signal and pull over to the right as safely as possible. Choose a well-lit area if you can. Step 2. Turn off your engine. Turn on your interior light if it's dark. Put both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Wait. Do not reach for anything. Do not dig for your license yet. Do not roll down your window more than a couple inches until the officer approaches. Step 3. When the officer asks for your documents, tell them where they are before you reach. My license is in my back right pocket. My registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for them now. Then move slowly. Step 4. Hand over the documents. Then place your hands back on the wheel. Step 5. Here's where most people mess up. The officer will almost certainly ask a question that isn't about your documents. Where are you headed tonight? Have you had anything to drink? Do you know why I stopped you? Your answer, delivered calmly, is either silence or, "I'm going to remain silent, officer. I've provided my documents. Am I free to leave?" Step 6. If they ask to search, you say, "I do not consent to any searches." Step 7. If they give you a ticket or a warning, take it. Do not argue on the side of the road. The roadside is not a courtroom. You fight a ticket later, in writing with a lawyer or on your own. Arguing at the window has never, in the history of traffic stops, made the ticket go away. Step 8. Once they hand back your documents and say you're free to go, say, "Thank you, have a good night." Then roll up your window and leave. Do not sit there. Do not ask follow-up questions. Leave. That's the blueprint. Simple, repeatable, legal. But here's the deeper layer that almost no YouTube video talks about. The psychology of the traffic stop isn't just about rights. It's about power dynamics. And power dynamics are driven by information. The officer has information you don't have, your driving record, the reason for the stop, the department's policies, their own training. But you have information they don't expect you to have. You know the law, you know your rights, you know the specific phrases that change the nature of the encounter, and that knowledge is invisible. They can't see it until you use it. That's your advantage. That's the insider knowledge feeling I promised you. Very few people know that you can say, "I don't answer questions during a traffic stop," and be fully within your legal rights. Very few people know that a dog sniff cannot prolong a stop without reasonable suspicion. Very few people know that consent searches are optional. Very few people know that you can record. Very few people know that silence is not obstruction. You are now one of those very few people. So let me ask you again the question I asked at the very beginning. What would you do if a single traffic stop changed the rest of your life? Not because you did something wrong, but because you said something you didn't have to say. Now you know the answer. Now you know the difference between what feels polite and what protects you. Now you know what police don't tell you and why not knowing can hurt you. But knowing isn't enough. Knowing only matters if you remember it under pressure. And under pressure, your brain will want to fall back on old habits, on politeness, on fear, on the instinct to explain yourself to authority. That's human. That's normal. But you're not here to be normal. You're here to be prepared. So here's your final challenge. Share this video with one person you care about. Seriously, right now. Not because I want the algorithm boost, though that helps, but because most people will never search for this information. They will only learn it if someone puts it in front of them. Be that person, and then do this. Practice. Out loud, in your car. Say the phrases, I choose to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to leave? Say them until they feel natural. Because the day those lights appear in your mirror, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to your level of preparation. And now, your level just got a whole lot higher. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a traffic stop where you said something you regretted? Or have you ever used one of these rights and seen what happened? Comment below. Don't lurk. Share your story. Because every story teaches someone else. And that's how we all get smarter, safer, and more aware. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me until the end. You didn't click off. That tells me you care about this. You care about being informed. And that matters more than you know. Drive safely. Know your rights. And never forget, silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the strongest thing you've got.